Blackett Strait, Solomon Islands, August 1st, 1943, 23:47 hours. The water was black glass, not dark blue, not navy, black, like spilled ink reflecting nothing but the occasional glint of starlight. Lieutenant Commander Robert Kelly stood on the deck of PT-109, a 77-foot Elco patrol torpedo boat powered by 3 Packard V-12 engines, each screaming 1,200 horsepower into the humid Pacific night. The air smelled of salt, diesel fumes, and something else, something rotting from the jungle shores 2 miles to starboard. He could hear the low rumble of his own engines, muffled to near silence, and the soft lap of water against the plywood hull. 80 feet of wood and aluminum, armed with 4 Mark 8 torpedoes and twin Browning machine guns, hunting steel destroyers in the dark. What no one tells you about war is how quiet it gets before the chaos, how your own heartbeat becomes the loudest sound in the world. Kelly had been running night patrols for 6 weeks now, ever since Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 2 arrived at Rendova Harbor in early July. 15 boats, 15 crews, all of them volunteers, all of them hunting the Tokyo Express, the Japanese supply convoys that ran down the slot every night, feeding their garrisons on Kolombangara and Vila. The Navy called it interdiction, the men called it suicide. Tonight, Kelly's orders were simple. Intercept a reported enemy convoy moving south through Blackett Strait. Intelligence suggested 3 destroyers, maybe 4, escorting troop barges. The PT boats would strike fast, launch torpedoes, and vanish before the destroyers could bring their 5-inch guns to bear. Simple. Except, nothing about hunting warships in a wooden boat was ever simple. Kelly's radio man, Ensign George Ross, crouched near the chart table, his face lit by the faint glow of the radio set. Skipper PT-157 reports contact bearing 270, range 4,000 yards, multiple contacts, big ones. Kelly felt his stomach tighten. 4,000 yards, just over 2 miles. Close enough to see muzzle flashes if the destroyers opened fire. He turned to his helmsman, a kid from Ohio named Kirksey, barely 22 years old. "Bring us to 270, dead slow, kill running lights." The boat turned, engines throttling down to a whisper. The crew moved without speaking, checking ammunition belts, loosening torpedoes in their tubes. They had done this 17 times before, 17 nights of slipping through enemy waters, launching fish that rarely hit their targets, racing back to base with destroyer searchlights sweeping the darkness behind them. 17 nights of surviving. But Kelly knew the odds. In June, PT-166 had taken a direct hit from a destroyer's main battery. The explosion vaporized the forward crew compartment. There were no survivors. And then he saw them. 3 shapes, massive and black, cutting through the strait like shadows given weight. Japanese destroyers, probably Fubuki-class, each displacing over 2,000 tons, each carrying enough firepower to obliterate every PT boat in the squadron. Kelly raised his binoculars. He could see the curve of their bows, the faint white foam at their water lines. They were moving fast, maybe 30 knots, and they hadn't seen the PT boats yet. "Range," Kelly whispered. 1,800 yards and closing, Ross replied. Kelly's hand moved to the torpedo director. "Stand by tubes 1 and 2. But something was wrong. The lead destroyer wasn't turning. It was coming straight at them, faster than Kelly had ever seen a warship move. The bow wave was enormous, glowing faintly with phosphorescence. He could hear it now, a deep thrumming roar that vibrated through the deck, through his chest, through his bones. "Skipper, that's not evasive action, that's ramming speed," Ross said. Kelly's mind raced. Standard tactics said fire torpedoes, then turn hard and run. But there wasn't time. The destroyer was less than 1,000 yards away now, closing at a combined speed of nearly 50 knots. 30 seconds, maybe less. "Hard to starboard," Kelly shouted. "Full throttle!" The Packard engines roared to life, all three screaming in unison as the PT-109 heeled violently to the right. The crew grabbed anything bolted down. Water exploded over the starboard rail. Kelly could see the destroyer clearly now, its towering bow, the white bone in its teeth, the black gun turret swinging toward them. And then the world turned to fire and thunder. The destroyer's forward 5-inch guns opened up at point-blank range. The first shell screamed overhead, so close Kelly felt the shock wave in his lungs. The second hit the water 50 feet to port, sending a geyser of white spray across the deck. The third, Kelly never saw the third shell. What he saw was the destroyer's bow, massive and unstoppable, filling his entire field of vision. The ship was going to cut them in half. "Brace for impact!" someone screamed. But the impact never came. Instead, at the last possible second, the destroyer veered just slightly, just enough, and its hull passed within 10 feet of the PT boat's starboard side. The wake hit like a freight train, throwing Kelly against the helm. Men tumbled across the deck. Equipment crashed into bulkheads. The boat rolled so hard that Kelly thought they were capsizing. And then, just as suddenly, they were through. The destroyer was past them, racing southward into the night, its searchlight sweeping the water behind it. Kelly pulled himself upright, gasping. His ears were ringing, his hands were shaking. The crew was picking themselves up, checking for injuries, staring at each other in disbelief. "Damage report," Kelly croaked. "Hull's intact," Kirksey said. "Engines running. We're okay, Skipper. We're actually okay." Kelly looked back at the destroyer's silhouette, now fading into the darkness. They should be dead. By every law of physics and war, they should be at the bottom of Blackett Strait right now. But they weren't. They were alive, and the convoy was still out there. Kelly turned back to his crew. He opened his mouth to give the order to pursue, and that's when the explosion lit up the southern horizon.
Blackett Strait, Solomon Islands, August 2, 1943, 0012 hours. The fireball rose 300 feet into the night sky, orange and red and impossibly bright, turning the black water into a field of dancing shadows. Kelly watched through his binoculars as secondary explosions rippled across the southern strait, ammunition cooking off, fuel tanks rupturing, men dying in flames that could be seen from 10 miles away. Someone had hit something big. "That's a destroyer," Ross said quietly, standing beside him. "Has to be. Nothing else burns like that." Kelly lowered the binoculars. His hands had stopped shaking, but his mind was still racing, replaying those 10 seconds when the destroyer's bow had filled the world. The destroyer that should have killed them, the destroyer that veered away. "Skipper, what are your orders?" Kirksey asked from the helm. Kelly looked at his crew. 12 men, all of them soaked, most of them bleeding from minor cuts and bruises. The boat's forward machine gun mount was bent, probably from the near-miss shell. One of the torpedo tubes had broken loose from its mooring. They had maybe 2 hours of fuel left and no way of knowing if the rest of the squadron had survived the engagement. But the convoy was still moving. Intelligence had reported troop barges behind the destroyers, wooden-hulled vessels packed with Japanese soldiers bound for Vila. Slow, vulnerable, exactly the kind of target PT boats were designed to hunt. Kelly made his decision. "Bring us around," he said. "Due south. We're going after those barges." The PT-109 carved a wide arc through the water, engines building back to full throttle. The Packard V-12s sang their mechanical war song, pushing the little wooden boat up to 40 knots, the hull pounding over the waves with jarring regularity. Kelly's crew checked weapons, redistributed ammunition, prepared for close-quarters combat. This was what they trained for. Not trading torpedoes with destroyers in the dark, but striking the supply lines that kept Japanese garrisons alive. Every barge they sank was a week of food that wouldn't reach enemy troops. Every crate of ammunition that went to the bottom was one less mortar barrage on American positions. Rendova Harbor, Solomon Islands, August 2, 1943, 03:27 hours. The PT-109 limped into harbor just before dawn, its port engine trailing smoke, its hull riddled with bullet holes. Kelly secured the boat, helped his wounded off, and filed his after-action report with squadron commander. 3 barges confirmed sunk, 1 destroyer damaged, possibly sunk, 0 American casualties beyond minor wounds. Another successful night patrol. But Kelly never filed the part about the destroyer that should have rammed them, the one that veered away at the last second. He couldn't explain it, couldn't understand it, so he never wrote it down. Years later, after the war, Kelly would learn something that kept him awake at night. The destroyer that nearly killed them, IJN Amagiri, Fubuki-class, commanded by Commander Kohei Hanami, had been carrying a forward-mounted searchlight that malfunctioned at 23:49 hours on August 1, 1943. For exactly 10 seconds, the bridge crew had been partially blinded by their own equipment. The helmsman, following last-second instinct rather than orders, had veered to avoid what he thought was debris in the water. It was not debris. It was PT-109. 10 seconds, a malfunctioning searchlight, a helmsman's reflex. That's all that separated Kelly and his crew from the bottom of Blackett Strait. Kelly never told anyone about this, but sometimes, late at night, he would think about those 10 seconds and wonder about the Japanese helmsman on Amagiri, whether he survived the war, whether he knew what he had done, whether he too lay awake thinking about the wooden boat that should have died. War is made of steel and fire and orders, but it's decided by seconds, by chance, by the invisible threads that connect us all, even across the darkness, even through enemy waters. The PT boats fought for 2 more years in the Pacific. Of the 15 boats in Squadron 2, 8 were lost to enemy action. Kelly commanded PT-109 through 37 night patrols before being reassigned stateside in November 1943. The Wooden Warriors had fought their giant war, and somehow, against all odds, some of them lived to tell the story.